Welcome to the Wise Idea Weekly Podcast with Christopher J. Harris, focusing on life, leadership, family, marriage, and the church. We are providing tools for our inspiration and wisdom for life. Our goal is to inspire everyday people to live wise lives. If you're new to us, we release a brand new podcast weekly on Thursdays. Thank you for tuning in for this week's episode. Here's our host, Christopher J. Harris.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to another episode of the Wise Idea Weekly Podcast with Christopher J. Harris. Man, I'm so excited. Like, this has been and is an incredible journey every single week to come into your ears, wherever that may be. You could be in the car riding, or somebody is running, or you're on the treadmill or the elliptical. You could be sitting at home. You could be cooking a meal. By the way, if you're cooking a good meal, send me one. But whatever the case may be, thank you so much for tuning in every single week. And the feedback and the reviews and the emails that you guys are sending are absolutely amazing. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. We are on mission. We are on mission to provide tools for inspiration and wisdom for life. And today, guys, we've got another amazing guest on with us. And I don't have to do a whole lot of pretense. We're going to jump right into the conversation because we've got a lot to talk about. We have been talking in this particular series of podcasts around what it means, around this idea of, can we defend the church? Should we defend the church? I've said before, and I'll say it again, I am in love with the local church, with all of its flaws and all. And I believe very much in the power of it. And so rather than talking about it to beat it down, we're going to talk about it to build it up. And so I've got another guest that's going to help me do it. He's a great leader. He's a leader's leader. He's been leading other leaders. He's the founder of the Catalyst Conference. And if you are listening to this podcast and have no idea what the Catalyst Conference is, I want you to press pause on my podcast, go and Google Catalyst Conference, and register for the next one because you need to be there. It's a game changer. And beyond all of that, he's also an author and a consultant, a speaker, and so many other things. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Brad Lomenick. Brad, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Christopher. Great to be on with you. Man, you got the radio voice, buddy. Like, you have the voice. If I had a voice like you, I'd be famous.
Well, tell somebody to start paying me for it because I don't feel like I have one, but it's all good.
Well, listen, I've got the face. I got the face for radio. You know, that's what they say in the radio business, is not the voice. I just have the face. My face needs to be hidden. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm not going to agree with you on that, but it's all good. We have a laugh with it. Absolutely. Well, it's great to be on, man, and I love what you're doing. Love the fact that you're trying to build into leaders. And I am a huge fan of podcasts. It's a great way to connect, be part of a community. Like you said, if you're on the treadmill or you're cooking a meal or you're mowing the lawn or you're out on the run, on the street, or you're walking, there's all kinds of ways to consume content today. And hopefully we're going to try to add value to some leaders. So I'm ready. Let's go.
Yeah, that's incredible, man. So let's jump right in it. You started Catalyst Conference, and, some people authentically, and I don't know how they could not, but some people may not know specifically about Catalyst. So let's really quickly, before we jump into some of the questions, just give us a context. How in the world did Catalyst get started? How were you at the forefront of that? And what did that look like in the beginning stages and all of that?
Great question. And I was part of the crew that started it. I don't take credit for it. There was a bunch of people involved. The credit really goes to John Maxwell. And many people have read a John Maxwell book on leadership because he's sort of the grand poobah. He's the starter of so many things in leadership, especially Christian leadership. So there was a bunch of us who were working for John and around John. And this was the late 90s. And, we were all in our 20s, a bunch of us. And I think he saw in us a real desire to gather our generation. And we had a real desire to gather our generation and to actually, create a conference or a movement, a brand. We didn't use those kind of words, but we knew that we felt like we wanted to create something where a bunch of young leaders could get together and actually be inspired and connected and feel like that, especially in the Christian world, among pastors, church leaders, business leaders, but those who follow Jesus, like we could get together and create something that we would all be proud of and also want to go to. So that was really the genesis of it. And it started in 2000. First Catalyst event was at North Point in Atlanta, Georgia. There was about 1,500 leaders there. And it was pretty amazing. We all kind of looked around, to your left and then to your right on the row you were on and thought, these are my people. I feel like I can change the world with these leaders who are in this room. And like I said, there was only 1,500 of us at that first gathering, but we knew we had struck oil in terms of drilling deep down and connecting with not just a pain point, but actually like a piece of leaders that every generation has to figure out how you're going to gather your tribe and your people. And, so we thought at that point, not that we knew how to do it or we were the only ones doing it, but we just felt like we had discovered something that was going to hopefully change culture and impact people and, I would say inspire the church. And that's 19 years ago. And it's still going strong and still thousands of leaders are showing up and gathering in locations all over the country.
Yeah, as a leader, Brad, I'd love to hear, how do you feel knowing that you were, whether there was a group there or not, I mean, you provided leadership for the group. And so how does that feel to sit back now? I don't know how involved you are in the day-to-day operations or what your role with Catalyst is now, but how does it feel, man, to know that there are literally thousands upon thousands of leaders across racial lines, across denominational lines that have set foot in Catalyst and you had a hand in that?
Well, you feel like a proud parent. I mean, you feel like, a proud uncle. You feel like you just look at the impact and the opportunity to sit in the captain's chair, at least for me. And I am always humbled by it. The opportunity that God gave me to have a seat at the table. Because, if any of us look around, and this was true for our team and for me, but if I looked around and thought, oh, I deserve this, this is what I've been building towards, this is my thing, I'm the right man for the job. If I start having those kind of thoughts, then, I'm going to be part of a problem compared to part of the solution. So, the ability for me to hold Catalyst with an open hand is really, really important and has been for all these years. And as you said, my role now is I stepped out of running it several years ago. And part of that was because when we started, we were trying to create something again for younger leaders. And we looked at those leaders who were over 40 and thought, we love you, but this is for us. And here's what happened 4 years ago. I turned 40. And so all of a sudden I'm that guy, right? And I think that's true in so many things, whether it's the church or whether it's business world or nonprofits, is, you age out pretty quick. And being a self-aware leader, or at least what I'm trying to be in terms of being self-aware, is, again, not just that I know I'm not the center of this story. Catalyst is way bigger than me, way bigger than any of us, but also that if I'm the one now creating a barrier for the success of it to continue, and for a new team to come along, new leaders to come along and breathe new life into it, then I've really got to make sure and have a true reality check. And this is hard because once something gets big and influential and there's lots of people involved and, it's the sizzle. Everybody liked, I love being in charge of Catalyst. I got invited to all the cool parties and, got invited to the White House and everything that was happening where there was, a table with a bunch of chairs for influential people. I was getting invited to that. So once you are stewarding something, it's really hard to hand it off. But I think I've done that okay, Christopher. Like, I feel like that's one of the pieces of my story that I did well. And now I can actually try to challenge and hopefully encourage other leaders that have started something or built something or have been part of something really successful, and to say, my story is not everybody's story. Like, I'm not saying to anybody, hey, listen, you got to get out of the captain's chair as soon as possible. What I am saying is that if I think it's all about me, then pretty quickly that's going to become a challenge for the growth and also for the ability for something to really thrive and flourish. So I don't, I always want to make sure that I am equally working my guts out, but also equally aware that it's not up to me. It's not my thing, and that actually frees me up to then make decisions and have freedom and be willing to innovate and risk and do all the things that I think great leaders do.
Man, my mind is just running a mile a minute because you've given so much wisdom, and thank you for sharing your heart in that way. I want to get to, and we're going to get to this question around how can we defend the church. But I got one more question around what you said here, and that is, even from a succession standpoint with organizations and churches and leaders and all of those things that you just kind of dealt with, what challenges have you experienced and how have you reinvented yourself? How have you navigated that? Because you like you just said, man, you were at all the cool places, the White House and the conferences, and even if you weren't speaking, you were there, and there was honor given, and there was name recognition, and there was I'll say red carpet, right? The red carpet was extended, and you willingly said, "Hey, let me hand this red carpet to somebody else." For you, what did the rest of that look like? What was the rest of that story now?
Well, that's a great question. And, the challenge is always, okay, what if I do hand something off that I've helped build and that I've put my life into, your sweat equity into and lots of years into, now what? Does that mean that I'm just going to go be put out to pasture and that I'm, going from the starting team to the JV team, to the B team or the C team? And the answer is no. Like, there are certain things that only I can do in this season. So the ability for me to be really strategic with the wisdom and experience, the things I've done, the things God's allowed me to lead, the learnings that I have now, I am uniquely gifted and wired and have experience that now there are things that only I can do. And, it's not that it's the end of the book when I step out of running Catalyst. It's just the end of that chapter. And all of us have to see that our book, it doesn't mean that we find the place that we're most comfortable, most content in, the highest pinnacle, the top of Mount Everest. And then what we do, many of us as leaders, and this is a challenge for me, it always will be. But when I get to the top of the mountain, I want to look around and go, my job now is to keep everybody else off of the mountain and the top of it. Compared to, no, your job when you get to the top is actually to pull people up with you. And then reality sets in and you look around and go, there ain't much room up here on the summit. So I may have to go back down and let somebody else have all the fanfare and sit in that seat, and again, it doesn't mean that I'm going to live the rest of my life and not have impact. My impact's going to look different though. So, I tell people my story is that I went from gathering thousands to now gathering tens. But those tens that I gather now are the ones gathering thousands. So I just changed the seat that I was sitting in at the table. I'm still at the table of influence, but I just changed the seat I was sitting in. And a lot of us who are believers, again, the Christian world, those of us who follow Jesus, we think that everything has to be up and to the right, meaning that we go from something big to something bigger. But that's not always the story. And if we go from something big to something small, everybody kind of looks at you and goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, man. I apologize. Man, what happened?" It's like the story has gone bad, and I'm like, no, the story's great. It's just that I'm sitting in a different seat now. So a lot of people, I think, again, don't be misdirected. That your story has to be something where you all of a sudden feel like you've gone to the JV team And this is one of the biggest issues in leadership right now, Christopher. You know that. Like, succession is a massive issue. We have more leaders who are in their 50s and 60s that are going to be handing things off. And it's really hard to hand things off, especially something you built. But man, if we don't get this right, we're gonna have a real hard time appropriately transferring generational leadership. Because what's happened is a lot of young leaders that were hanging around. My generation, we looked at it and said, we got to wait. We'll just hang around and wait until whoever that is that's in charge gets to the point where, they cry uncle and they have to get out of the way. The next generation, those in their 20s and 30s, they're not waiting. They'll go start their own thing. They'll go, plant a church. They'll go start a new nonprofit. They'll go spin up a new tech company. And whether that's right or wrong, it's a reality now, so we can't miss that generational transfer, or we're going to have all these organizations that have had massive impact that you will watch, sort of fade into the sunset.
Yeah, it sounds like you're saying that, as you just said, it's not right or wrong, but it sounds like the older generation has to have the responsibility to say that if you are going to start your thing, here's what it takes and here's what you're going to need for it to be sustained. So I don't want to see you fall and crumble. So let's create the conversation. And there'll be some things that you can't get until time evolves, but at least I don't want you to crash and burn. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly right. And here's a football analogy. Again, I'm not saying that you have to be Barry Sanders in order to get it right, but I don't want to be Brett Favre. And the difference of those two stories, right? I mean, Brett Favre, I love Brett Favre. Brett Favre is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, but he hung around too long. And everybody on the team at Minnesota or wherever he finally ended up, he kept coming back from retirement, coming back. And they're like, Brett, we love you, but you're old, buddy. I mean, go move back to Mississippi and start that new start the new season. Where Barry Sanders, we all looked at Barry and said, you still got a lot left. And I want to make the mistake on that side, meaning I still have a lot left and I'm going to hand something off way before I need to. That I think that's the new. I want that to be the new story that is getting told way more often than the other story, which is, man, that leader hung around too long. They outwore their welcome. What they built, in the early days is now become the barrier to the growth, and that's way too often nowadays.
That's so funny because even in basketball, who many people consider to be the greatest of all time. I don't want to get into debate about MJ and LeBron, but I'm just going to say right now, MJ, right? Mm-hmm. He almost messed that up, right? Yep. Like he almost came back and it's like, okay, wait a minute, no, please don't mess up your legacy.
Right. I mean, I loved the Washington Wizards version of MJ, but I really loved the Chicago Bulls version, right? Yeah. And the Washington Wizards version, everybody in their mind was thinking, come on, man. It's time to go start that new season. Time to go be an owner. Time to go be a legend. Time to go build your business, start your company, whatever. Don't hold on too long. That season's passed you by.
That's awesome. So let's jump into it a little bit. I mean, we already are, but this question, Brad, of how in the world can we defend the church? Because we know that the church has its issues. It just does, man. It's got these integrity issues. It's got these social issues, these social justice issues. It's got false narrative, wrong narrative issues. It's got organizational health issues. The list can be endless. And so for the people that are listening to this, where do we start even with the conversation? How do we not only just acknowledge those issues, but how do we convince people that those issues actually could be a part of the grander story that God is creating?
Yeah. Well, I want to start with I think one of the biggest issues, and that's leadership. And that's a broad subject, but let me dive down and dig a little deeper into leadership. And I think one of the most important things is self-leadership. And regardless of whether you are leading a church of 20 or a church of 20,000, you have to lead yourself well. And that's where it has to start. And, you know, the pursuit of self-awareness, of authenticity, of honesty, of transparency, all those pieces that go into being the best version of yourself, you know, that's such a big part of what I see many times in the church, the lack of reality. And, you know, we tend to think as church leaders that we're supposed to be perfect, or we're supposed to have it all together, and we're supposed to, you know, to paint this facade of the perfect life. And that's just not a true, it's not a true story, and it's not a true picture. Now, am I saying that, you know, you need to surprise your congregation and those who follow you and those who are connected to you, and they go, oh my gosh, you share too much? No, but what I am saying is that your ability to paint the picture of reality, both for your people who are on your team and part of your congregation, as well as yourself, is a really big deal. And that means that you're connecting with people based on the ability to always be congruent between the private and the public life. You know, the idea that you have integrity is the idea of there's a sense of integral, and integral is about congruency. It's that there's a parallel equal sign between the world that is real and the world that you start to paint or build and start to surround yourself with, you know, with the folks who tell you what you want to hear compared to what you need to hear. So it's got to start there. And, you know, we have a leadership crisis, not just in our country, but I'm pretty sure we have a leadership crisis with leaders in general, in all kinds of categories and different industries and genres. And if we're the church, we should be the ones that are leading the best and actually the most self-aware. And we're starting again with that idea of authenticity. And here's the good news: is authenticity it's actually the fuel today. I think it's the greatest currency for us to be able to impact people well. So, you know, if you're in a community and your community, the people who might be outside of your church, or, you know, the school principal or the mayor or the business leaders, and they look at you and go, man, I don't know about that church over there, but I know this. Bob, who's the pastor, I can trust him. When he says something, it's real. You know, when he shows up and says, we'll make it happen and we'll partner with you and we'll get this done, I can believe it. And that's the kind of reputation we need to start to really work on, compared to the other side of the story, which tends to unfortunately be many times the case, which is, well, they had good intentions, but I'm not sure I can trust them. And, you know, they put on a good show on Sunday, but, you know, I've heard some things about that pastor over there. And we got to overcome those kinds of reputations in our communities, in our cities, wherever we're trying to make an impact. So that would be option one, and the start of where I think we need to really work on making sure the church is the truest form of the greatest story ever told, which is the gospel.
Yeah. So, you know, one of the things that very, very much impressed me during my exposure with Catalyst, and I know that you were a part of this, which is why I'm bringing it up, is you guys did not ignore the real social issues of the day. I don't remember what year it was, but I clearly remember sitting in the arena there right outside of Atlanta and listening to, I forget the poet's name from California, and a couple other folks that you had on stage. And, you know, this was right after one of the police shootings that taken place. And you guys, I mean, you went head first right into the conversation. You didn't skirt around it. And I think it, you know, when I go back and I look at what was happening in the seats around me, I think it actually shocks people that Brad Lomenick is on the stage and asking questions about this subject, because we knew that this was happening. It was, you know, front page news, but I think people thought, well, I'm going to go to Catalyst and just learn about leadership, and then we'll keep it moving, and I'll think about that later. And you brought the conversation in.
Yeah.
So with that said, and on the backdrop of you having been at the table and in the room in many places, what do you believe some of the biggest issues are that the church is struggling with that makes our reputation what it is?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And by the way, that the conversation you're talking about that was happening on stage, that was after I had stepped out of running it, but I was still, waving the flag and pumping my fist and raising my hand saying, yes, thank you. So, kudos to Tyler Reagan, who now runs Catalyst and was equally, if not more committed than even I was to having some hard conversations. And, that we always try to be at that intersection of tension, but also opportunity, because I think that's where leaders hang out. Leaders should be out there, just on the cliff where you look around and go, this is scary. But that's part of the call of a leader, is to step out and be in front. So I just wanted to clarify that in terms of the picture you were talking about in that moment at the event, because it was really powerful. I would say,
hey Brad, really fast. I'm sorry, before you do that, you just said something really powerful. You said leaders hang out at the intersection of tension and what else?
And opportunity.
Wow.
So we tend to not want to combine those because they feel like they're on both sides of the spectrum, and they are, but that's where leaders always are at the places of tension. And tension is a good thing, by the way. We tend to think of tension as, oh, it's stressful. I got to move away from it. I got to get out of it. That's too hard. It's way easier to sit back and be comfortable, but the places where there's tension is actually the places where the most opportunity is usually available to us. And it's also the place where we tend to move things forward and get things done, so we actually did a theme. This was like 2008, I think, Christopher, 10 years ago at Catalyst, and it was called The Tension is Good. And we talked about
I was there.
Were you there? Yeah. Okay, good. The tension is good. And that's a true statement. There's things that stay in balance because of tension. Without tension, a lot of things are not able to happen. So to that point, your question of what are the biggest issues? I mean, obviously we've got some massive, fundamentally cultural divisive issues, especially related to the issues of I would say reconciliation racially. I would say reconciliation with different religions. The idea that somebody who's different than me, that I always have the right answer. That is a strong problem that we've got to address. And here's where it starts. This is true, and everybody I think will shake their head, but it has to start with you being willing as a leader to step out in the places where you're uncomfortable and start having conversations and connect with people who are different than you, who look different than you, who think different than you. And we always think that if I do that, then am I saying that I'm wrong, or am I saying that they're right? No, you're just willing to listen. And the biggest thing I think we've lost is the ability to listen in our culture. And, ask a good question. Don't feel like you have to have the answer. We live in a world today that everybody feels like they've got to give an answer immediately. And my approach is always just ask a good question, Brad. If I ask a good question, I actually elevate my level of influence, and I honor somebody else who I'm having the conversation with. Because when I say, what do you think? What is happening in that moment is that I'm giving respect. Now, if I say it with only the intention of then giving a rebuttal to what they said, that's an incorrect motivation. But if I can say that, if I can actually express and have a posture of curiosity and to say, I really am interested in what you have to say, you automatically break down barriers. And it's actually I've listened to a lot of people who are experts on negotiation, And most negotiation experts will say, when you let the other person have the power, you actually move into a place of power yourself. But it's a different kind of power. And you're not manipulative. You're not trying to get yours. You're not doing that because you want to flip it. But what you do is you say, you are now the celebrity of honor in this conversation. So that's just a side convo hack that I think is really helpful for people, and it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's somebody who you disagree with. It doesn't matter if it's if a person of different ethnicity. It doesn't matter if it's a person who grew up different than you. Whatever the issue, fundamental, conservative, liberal, who cares? But walk into the conversation with somebody who you don't necessarily see eye to eye on, and just ask them, hey, I want to hear what you have to say. And all of a sudden things change. Or at least I think that's the place where we have to start.
Thanks again for joining us on another episode of the Wise Idea Podcast with Christopher J. Harris. We hope you enjoyed our time together. If you did and would like additional resources and information, you can find the previous episodes, show notes, featured guest information, and more at www.thewise-idea-podcast.com. We also invite you to join the conversation on social media. The Wise Idea Podcast is on Twitter and Facebook. Find us at The Wise Idea and at our Facebook group, The Wise Idea Podcast. On Instagram, find us at The Wise Idea Podcast. Our host is also on social media. You can find him regularly on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Pinterest, all located at CJ Harris 1. Finally, if you enjoyed what you've heard, head over to iTunes and/or Google Play and leave a rating and review for other listeners to find us. Our podcast is also on Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Thanks again for joining us. We will see you the next time. Live wisely.
Get understanding.